Okay, so today we are going to start our unit on the early republic era, which is basically the first 5 presidents of the United States. So after the Constitution is written and we start having presidents, we start having that executive branch, these are the kind of issues and problems that they were dealing with at that time. So again, it's the first 5 presidents. This time era is about 1789 until 1825. And here are some of the problems that they're dealing with. So the first part of the Constitution is called the preamble. In order to form a more perfect union, the first 5 presidents have to establish justice, they have to ensure domestic tranquility, secure the blessings of liberty, promote the general welfare, provide for the common defense. These are all kind of vague terms, but they have to define what these mean. And what the first 5 presidents do, they understand that is what the rest of our history is going to do. That's what the presidents that follow are going to do as a way to meet each of these 5 perfect union characteristics. So during this time, they have foreign affairs and domestic affairs. A foreign affair is a problem with another country that the United States has to deal with. The policy is how that president deals with it. The domestic affair is how the United States handles issues within itself. So I also need you to go ahead and read the top of page 11 where it tells you what to do with each of these issues, and I will be having little reminders within this video to make sure that you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, what it tells you to do on the top of page 11. So on the margin of each of these main issues, you need to write down a D if it's a domestic affair and an F if it's a foreign affair. This will help you with future assignments, I promise. So comprehending foreign policy. Foreign policy, again, is how a president chooses to deal with other countries. Foreign affairs are the issues that they face with other countries. So for example, the British were stopping our ships and imprisoning the sailors. This is an affair. How the president responded to that action is their policy. So all foreign policies go back to the security of the United States. Borders is a territorial security. Trade is an economic security. We have to have that security for people to have money, for people to make money. And then conflict issues are what I previously described. It's these specific problems that arise with other countries and how we handle that. That's all security that the United States needs, the United States people need. So the first president of the United States, George Washington, is who we are going to be talking about today. He created a presidential cabinet, which is a group of advisors. We've kind of talked about this before during the Constitution. They are extremely educated in their field. Usually they have a lot of experience in whatever field they are in. So the Treasury Department secretary, the cabinet member for the Treasury Department, has a lot of knowledge in trade, a lot of knowledge in money. The Secretary of Education usually is a teacher. They have been a teacher for years, or they've been up in the school system for years, so they know how schools work. Those are a couple examples of cabinet members that the president creates. So in your notes, I need you to write down, do you think this is a domestic affair or a foreign affair, creating the cabinet? The president had to create a cabinet. Is that foreign or domestic? Alexander Hamilton. He served as Secretary of Treasury, which means he was the leader or the head of the Treasury Department, the cabinet. He created a national bank that would house the government's money. So all that tax dollars that you're paying to the national government, that's where that would go. He also decided that the federal government would take over all the debt from the states. You got to think some of these states are in a lot of debt because of the revolution. If we've learned one thing throughout the course of the causes of the revolution, wars cause debt, right? That's what caused the British government to go into so much debt in the first place, was a war. So this war, this revolution, caused the United States to go into a lot of debt. He began issuing protective tariffs, which is going to put a higher tax on foreign-made products, so American-made products costed less. Financial plan. In your notes, write whether you think this plan is a domestic affair or a foreign affair. A D or an F. 5-star question. Thomas Jefferson is going to serve as the Secretary of State. This is the department that oversees affairs with other countries. Thomas Jefferson loved spending time in Europe, specifically France. So he knew a lot about how other countries functioned and how they operated and how their governments functioned and operated. So some of the other events in Washington's presidency was the Whiskey Rebellion. It was a series of rebellions that were sparked over the new whiskey tax that Alexander Hamilton and George Washington put in place. Actually, the farmers that rebelled during this time had a really good reason for doing this. George Washington was actually one of the top manufacturers in whiskey, and the way that the tax was laid out, it benefited people who produced a lot of whiskey, but it hurt people who just produced a small amount of whiskey. So those small-time farmers were having to pay more in taxes than people who made a lot of whiskey like George Washington. So it makes sense that they were really, really angry. Washington had to shut down this with brute force, like quick. He had to say, nope, this is not what we're going to do. We are a strong country now. You're not going to rebel against us for every single little thing. You have to stay calm and trust your government. And this proved the strength of the new national government. So in your notes, write whether you believe this is a foreign affair or domestic affair, the Whiskey Rebellion. So the next event in George Washington's presidency was Jay's Treaty. So after the British government accepted defeat and the United States became the United States, the British still had military forts on American soil because it used to be, Great Britain. But they did this because the United States owed money to Great Britain. With Jay's Treaty, we resolved that, and the British still had to get all these forts out. So it removed these forts. So in your notes, I need you to go ahead and write down, is Jay's Treaty a domestic affair or is it a foreign affair? And which pillar of security do you think Jay's Treaty falls under? Is it a border security? Is it trade security? Is it conflict? And why? I am only grading the why. I'm not grading which pillar you choose. The next event is going to be Pinckney's Treaty. This was a treaty with Spain that allowed the Americans to trade on the Mississippi River. Now you got to think at this time, the Mississippi River is the biggest river in the continental United States. It's a huge river, and all of the western territories needed this river in order to connect to an ocean. Well, Spain was not letting them do that, and they were not letting Americans, United States citizens, into New Orleans, which was the mouth of the Mississippi River. It still is the mouth of the Mississippi River. It's where that biggest chain of rivers connects to an ocean, or in this case, the Gulf of Mexico. But with this treaty, Americans were now able to access both the port and the whole Mississippi River. So is Pinckney's Treaty a domestic affair or a foreign affair? A D or an F? And which pillar would you put Pinckney's Treaty over? Remember, I'm only grading the why. Is it a border issue? Is it a trade security? Is it a conflict security pillar? All right, the last issue that goes on in George Washington's presidency is going to be his farewell address. This is the speech that he gave to the country when he decided that he was no longer going to run for president for a third term. He was just too old at this point, and he just didn't think that he would serve the country very well. He ended up dying not long after this. So in his address, he warned against creating political parties. He warned to stay neutral in foreign affairs, especially wars. If Great Britain and France are in a war, which they were at this time, there is no need for the United States to get in the middle of that. All right, remember everything. You should have put a D or an F off to the side in the margin of your notes. And this is the end of week 1. I'll see you next week.